Sonic the Hedgehog was a huge success, being one of the best-selling Sega games back then. With it selling over 4 million copies by the end of 1992 and making Sega and the Genesis a real competitor, the team knew they had to make a sequel. Sega wanted to develop more games in America, since their games, like Sonic 1, were very popular and selling well in the States. Mark Cerny, a developer at Sega, wanted to establish a studio that would combine both philosophies of both Japanese and American developers. Cerny was able to convince Yuji Naka to come back after he left Sega because he had disagreements with his salary. STI, the Sega Technical Institute, was created for the sole purpose of this collaborative effort. Yuji Naka went to America to work on Sonic 2 at Sega of America, while Nato Oshima, a designer who designed both Sonic and Dr. Eggman, as well as working on the first game, stayed in Japan to work on a certain game that would have been developed for the Genesis add-on, the Sega CD. I've already covered that game already, so we'll ignore it for now. With just a year of development time, Sonic 2 was released on November 21st, 1992, with it being about a year and a half after the first game was released. Looking back, I rarely played Sonic 2 when I was younger. I was focused on playing and being shit at Sonic 1 and CD. Like, yeah, I played 2, but I never really got into it like 1 or CD. It wasn't until high school where I was fully able to complete it, and Sonic 3. I thought Sonic 2 was a good game, but it never really wowed me. It didn't help that with my experience with later Sonic games and other platformers in general, made it look boring to me. There was just something special about Sonic 1 being the first Sonic game that made it interesting, and even though I didn't like it. And I just always liked Sonic CD. But as you go into this video, you'll see that Sonic 2 is a game that I appreciate. I swear I like this series, I swear. Let's just jump straight into it. The way the game looks and plays is very similar to the first game, but with a lot of tweaks. Sonic 2 is just about a complete overhaul when it comes to the controls, and you'll notice it immediately with Sonic's new move, the Spin Dash. The Spin Dash is the new ability. To do a Spin Dash, you hold down, spam the jump button, which makes Sonic rev up like a ball, and releasing it gives you a burst of speed. They did it. Sonic feels perfect now. Well, almost perfect, but we'll get to that. Sonic didn't necessarily feel bad to control in the first game. The real problem with Sonic 1's gameplay mainly came down to its level design and how it didn't really feel compatible with Sonic's physics. Sonic himself was mostly fine, but whenever playing Sonic 1 it always felt like something was missing. Also the speed cap. Sonic 2 and CD mostly remove this, which makes gaining speed so much more satisfying. Blasting through levels feels so much more fun for multiple reasons, and the improved feel and how the Spin Dash adds so much. But there's just one slight problem. When using the Spin Dash, you can jump out of it, which adds to the fun factor and overall movement of the game. But let's say you wanted to cancel that action. Like the speed that you'll get will make you overshoot or miss a platform or something. When jumping out of a Spin Dash, you'll be locked in that direction with no way to stop that momentum. It kind of reminds me of Mario 1, in which you're sort of locked into a jump when running with no way of backing out. It's not that big of a problem, but when you start to notice it, it gets super annoying. Playing later 2D Sonic games actively hurt this game, as that lock is removed in later titles. All that being said, Sonic still feels great with the Spin Dash adding so much. But just like Sonic 1, the control of the character doesn't mean much if the levels aren't good. And before we talk about how fun, or how bad these levels are, let's talk about how good this game looks. Sonic 2 is a major step up from the first game. While Sonic 1 had a more simple and dreamlike tone, being more abstract, Sonic 2 is more detailed. Emerald Hill is just a Green Hill clone, but brighter. The more mechanical-like levels like Chemical Plant and Oil Ocean have these darker but beautiful backgrounds. Just look at the orange hue and all the silhouettes of the buildings and structures and backgrounds as well as the streets, all combined with the purple platforms that make the overall level aesthetic look strange with the contrasting color palette, but that contrast really looks nice. Going back to Chemical Plant, it's my favorite level in the game, all in gameplay, music, and of course, its art style. Its whole aesthetic reminds me of Scrapburn, but way more colorful and lively. Maybe I just like looking at building backgrounds, because levels with a lot of buildings that are in silhouettes, with light only coming from the windows, adds a lot of depth to the stage. I can say a lot about most of these acts, but there's a reason why this is such a step up from the first game. There is so much depth and detail put into these backgrounds. They all just feel very colorful and lived in. Overall, graphics good. Now let's get to the real meat of the game, the levels themselves. When it comes to the level design, god damn, what an upgrade. Mostly. The main problem with Sonic 1 was how much it slowed the player down. For being a game that was focused on speed and momentum, there were many times in which the game just decided not to have the player utilize the speed or the physics of Sonic. That's why Green Hill is the best level, because it actually utilizes the concept of momentum-based platforming really well. Although the game did reward players by skipping certain sections, it still doesn't change the fact that most of the game was very slow. Now, when it comes to its sequel, all of these levels feel so much more open and really reward the player for sticking to the higher parts of the level, with the spin dash also helping that. Right before we start talking about higher and lower paths, let's see what these levels are exactly. Sonic 2 has a whopping 9 to 11 stages, leagues more than the last game. But there's an asterisk in that, because of the last few levels. But we'll get to that. Emerald Hill, Chemical Plant, Arctic Ruin, Casino Night Zone, Hilltop, Mystic Cave, Oil Ocean, and
Metropolis!
I know I just mentioned 8 levels when I just said that there were 9 to 11, but we'll get to that. Let's get the more boring levels out of the way, because I really want to be positive in these videos for once. Mystic Cave and Aquatic Ruin. These ones just never really did it for me. They're not necessarily bad levels, but they didn't really leave any impression on me. Arctic Ruin is sort of the water stage of the game, but it's not very interesting. This stage follows a 3-path structure to a T, but specifically for this level, it's not really a good thing. It's not very hard to fall all the way to the bottom path, and the highest path is just extremely boring to go through. Like, what else is there to talk about this level? These fucking arrows that shoot at you? The same thing goes for Mystic Cave. It's just not very interesting. The purple background and green rocks look fine, but besides that, even though it follows the same 3-path structure, it doesn't change the fact that none of these paths are very interesting or fun. Also, the poles and vines kill the pacing of the level for me. Casino Night Zone. Casino Night Zone. I'm gonna be honest, this one just fucking sucks. I love bumpers. You know how much I love bumpers. You know how much I fucking love bumpers. Yeah, baby, bouncing around and shit, being an annoying, unfun gimmick that kills the pacing. Yeah, I fucking love bumpers. Fuck yeah. I know that the entire gimmick is that it's basically a pinball stage, and Sonic's momentum-like physics emulates pinball in a way, so making it a gimmick for an entire stage is a good idea. But the bumpers, the goddamn bumpers, they're even worse here because they're everywhere. Hilltop is somewhat forgettable, but not necessarily in a bad way. It's only because it doesn't really have any big fun gimmicks that make it stand out. Even with that, the level is still pretty fun, especially during these sections where you have to precisely platform below lava that slowly rises up to you. Honestly, this section alone showcases the way the developers designed Sonic 2, forcing you to make precise jumps, but the level also forcing you to go fast with the threat of the lava. You know what? I retract my statement. I like this level. Emerald Hill is the first level of the game. I was just gonna skip this one because it's basically just a Green Hill clone, but since we're talking about all the levels, why not? Just like Green Hill, it does a really good job at showcasing the design and level ideas for the entire game. Overall, the level is simple but fun, as well as somewhat teaching the player the new mechanics. Oil Ocean. Apparently a lot of people aren't very fond of this level, but I really like it. The oil slides, when used properly, allow you to skip some sections, which I find pretty cool. Metropolis Zone. I have heard many horror stories about this level. It's extreme difficulty with poorly placed enemies and overall poor level design that actively tries to fuck with the player. The level's hard. That's the basic consensus of the level. When playing the game, I was dreading having to go play that level again, because when I played Sonic 2 for the first time, I hated it. So I was thoroughly shocked to see that. I didn't really have a hard time with it. In fact, I was sort of having fun. That does not mean it didn't have any dumb shit though. I probably have better examples in other levels, but here specifically, the physics feel pretty unpolished at points. Like, jumping off walls doesn't even feel right. The entire level overall feels very unpolished, and here in the game specifically, I found way more bugs than usual. And it's weird because the game is, like, really polished. Or at the very least, feels really polished. Like, there are things that only happen to me in this level. Because again, for the most part, the game is pretty well put together. I can't say that for most of the games in this series. The enemy placements suck, as well as that specifically bringing out the most frustration when going through these acts. But for the most part, the stage was pretty fun. It's hard, but like, it's the final level of the game. I expect it to be difficult. Okay, let's actually talk about difficulty. Sonic 2 is known for how hard and frankly bullshit it is, how cheap the enemy placements are, and, well, Metropolis Zone. You can't forget about Metropolis Zone. And, well, when it comes to how hard Sonic 2 really is, it's a complicated question. Sonic 2's biggest flaw is what it adds. With the somewhat removal of the speed cap, and the addition of the spin dash, and the overall different structure of the level design compared to the first game, you are going fast. And well, obviously, this game was released in the 90s and was meant to be played in a 4:3 aspect ratio. So since you can barely see anything in front of you, you are almost definitely bound to get hit by something. You know, I was looking for footage of me being hit by an enemy as they appear on screen, but I could only find that stuff in Metropolis. So maybe I'm just like fucking good for like the entire game. So you know, maybe I'm just too fucking good at the game. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? For me specifically, when I was playing Sonic 2, I didn't really have a hard time going through it until the end. But we'll get there. I think Sonic 2 and most games fall into the category of not being that fun until you replay them. I didn't really want to talk about this until I got further into the retrospective. Most Sonic games, most Sega games have this layer of difficulty. Comparing it to something like Mario, a franchise that is very easy to pick up and play, there's depth in those games. But you don't need to be very skilled at video games to enjoy them. When I played Sonic 2 for the first time, just like Mario 3, you can watch my video on it, I hated it, falling for many of the beginner traps throughout the game. But as I replayed it over and over, you sort of develop a muscle memory for all these more bullshit moments. Sonic 2 is a hard game, until you learn it. Anyways, let's talk about the best level in the game. Chemical Plant, the second level of the game, and where Sonic 2 peaks. Whenever I hear people talk about this game, many of them who played the game when they were younger said that they got stuck in this level. Or maybe I'm mixing that with Marble Zone from the last game. Either way, I never really had trouble with this level. In fact, I had a lot of fun with it. There are these sections that really just showcase the speed of Sonic. These sections are really cool to see as Sonic just shoots through these hoops and slopes. Oh. I think these acts showcase the level structure perfectly. In these portions, you can easily fall into the water, having to climb back all the way up out of the water before you drown. There are these parts of the level that also showcase not only the utilization of momentum, but also showing you that if you pay attention, you can get to higher parts of the level. The amount of paths you can take in this level is crazy. That's what makes this level special. It's one of the stages in the entire series. I mean, there has to be a reason why they bring this level back as much as Green Hill. I love Chemical Plant. I love the level design, I love the aesthetics, I love the music, but we're not there yet, so we still gotta talk about the last act of the game. In Sonic 1, each level was split into 3 acts, with the third act housing the boss, but now they changed the structure for it to only be 2 acts. Getting rid of the third act was a good change, as it makes sure the level doesn't overstay its welcome. But for some reason, Metropolis still has 3 acts, which I think is another reason why people don't like this level. Sky Chase Zone is not very fun. From a cinematic perspective, it's pretty cool, chasing Eggman into the sky while riding Sonic's plane in the tornado. Yeah, Sonic owns a plane. I mean, he had to get these islands somehow, you know? Like, he doesn't just run on the water. The level is just boring. There's not really much of a level to talk about, actually. You're just dodging these turtles in the sky and that's it. There's also Wing Fortress Zone, which I just remembered existed, and to be honest, the only interesting thing about this level is the end where Sonic grabs a goddamn rocket, where we reach the final level, the Death Egg. Wait. Before we talk about the final stage, why is Sonic going to space? And who is this little rat who's been following Sonic? Well, West Side Island is where the game takes place. And as for the reason why Robotnik is here, he's searching for the Chaos Emeralds. But for some reason, a 7th Chaos Emerald has appeared. Apparently it was just on the island, separated from the others. Why not? Eggman's collecting them to power up his new invention, the Death Egg. While Sonic follows Robotnik, to kill him since he didn't finish the job in the last game, he notices a little fox following him. The little fox boy is named Tails. He's named that because he has 2 tails. Yeah, he decided to follow Sonic because he thought he looked cool. I mean, yeah, Sonic is rad as hell. The main reason for why he actually followed Sonic was because he didn't bully him for having 2 tails, when many of the other animals on the island made fun of him and gave him that nickname. You see, his name isn't actually Tails. During the development of the game, both the North American and Japanese developers came up with different names for the little fox. While the Japanese team came up with the name Tails, the American team came up with the name Miles Per Hour. They obviously went with Tails, but they made it so that his real name was actually Miles. Miles Tails Per Hour. I think Tails is a better name, but I'm glad they kept the other one too. I solely like it because of the pun. Miles Per Hour. Miles Per Hour. I'm not a huge fan of Tails. I mean, I don't hate him. He does get a lot of good character moments in the adventure games, but I'm just not really fond of him. Tails is actually super important to the series for one reason. You see, in the lore, Tails is the one who invented the spin dash. Tails is able to get Sonic onto the rocket so he can finally get to the Death Egg. And once Sonic heads inside, he meets his second robotic doppelganger. Silver, Metal, Mecha? This dude. I'm just gonna call him Silver. Oh, he's already dead. Eggman then. While outrunning Sonic, he tries to get into his newest machine, and the final boss, the Death Egg Robot. I know I just said this game isn't that difficult in the gameplay portion, but yeah, fuck this boss. When it comes to the final boss, it's the hardest damn thing in the game. And I mean, yeah, it should be. It's the final challenge. But there's just one small problem. The hitboxes are very weird in this game. There is a very, very small opening that actually gives you a chance to hit him. And to be honest, that's this fight's biggest problem. His fights are pretty well choreographed and very slow, so it gives you multiple chances to hit him. Again, the problem is you have very few chances to actually get a clean hit on him. Once you beat Eggman, which for some reason makes the entire Death Egg self-destruct, Sonic escapes, falling until Tails is able to catch him, ending Sonic 2. Wait, I feel like I'm forgetting something. God damn it. The Emeralds. The goddamn Chaos Emeralds. Just like the last game, you haven't beaten the game until you've gotten all the Chaos Emeralds. The Chaos Emeralds suck to grab in Sonic 1. But hey, let's see how the game deals with the Emerald Hunt this time. We're able to enter the special zones this time by grabbing 50 rings and entering the sparkles on top of the checkpoints, in which we enter this game's special zone. Although it is impressive that this is able to run on the Genesis at all, it controls and feels like ass. I don't know how to explain this, but it just kind of puts a strain on the eyes. The half-pipe moves and swirls in a way that generally makes it hard to pay attention. It's not so hard for like the first 3, but it gets really bad in the later stages, for multiple reasons. You have to collect a certain amount of rings in 3 segments. Once completing that goal, your reward is the Emerald. If you don't collect enough rings, you won't get the Emerald. So not only do you have to grab these rings, in which some can be very hard thanks to how sluggish Sonic feels, you also gotta dodge all these bombs. The bombs on their own aren't very hard to dodge. The difficulty, and the problem, is needing to grab all these rings while dodging. Combining this with how bad Sonic feels, the later stages are absolutely agonizing. On a conceptual level, it's better than Sonic 1. But it's hard, and I'm bad at video games. What do you even get when you obtain all the Chaos Emeralds? Instead of the normal ending where Tails saves Sonic, instead, Sonic turns yellow and flies. After collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds and collecting 50 rings, you can turn into Super Sonic. He's faster, invincible, and that's it. To be honest, it's kind of a lame reward, and the different ending isn't as interesting as the regular ending. Personally, I think Tails catching Sonic feels more cool and makes Tails feel more important. Overall, the Emeralds suck. Also, the music for the super form overwrites the music of the stage, and that kind of annoys me. But, speaking of music, Sonic 2 has a pretty great soundtrack. When it came to Sonic 1's soundtrack, it was composed by Masato Nakamura, the bassist for the J-pop band Dreams Come True, as he returned to compose the sequel. When it comes to my personal favorite tracks of the game, one of them is Casino Night Zone. It really makes you feel like you're gambling in a casino. Metropolis Zone feels weirdly upbeat, but it's still very catchy. And Chemical Plant. Just like the level, it goes hard. It has some really good build-ups in between the song, and overall has a really good rhythm to it. The entire soundtrack overall is really great, and just completely eclipses the first game in quality. The game sold well, really well. Sonic 2 grossed over $450 million during its initial release. It's one of the best-selling games on the Genesis, just behind the first game, and the success of the game is probably because of its marketing campaign. I think why people still talk about and love Sonic 2 just feels more complete and well put together as a game. But for the longest time, I didn't really care about Sonic 2. And even now, I haven't really changed my mind on it. I hope this video kind of proves that. But for me personally, this game is affected by the fact that just about every single other 2D Sonic game in the series eclipses it for me, in my opinion. The thing is, Sonic 2 is still far from a bad game.
But it can be better.
There's the mobile port and Sonic Origins, the most accessible versions. The original Sonic 2 was able to be bought on Steam, but, you know, Sega fucking sucks. But just like Sonic 1 and CD, Sonic 2 has a definitive version. Sonic 2 Absolute, made by the same team that made Sonic 1 Forever, is an expanded port of the mobile version, with a whole load of extra options that add things from the later games as well as adding some fun tweaks to mess around with. The game looks great, and hey, the special stage isn't even an eyesore anymore. There is a lot about Absolute and how much it improves on an already good game, but I'll save that for a later video, specifically about all the ports and versions of these classic Sonic games. So for now, let's finish this. The more unique and interesting level design, the more lively and colorful graphics, improved controls, and overall polish makes Sonic 2 a game well worth playing. But, well, again, for me, this is a personal thing. I like Sonic 2. I've always liked Sonic 2. I even enjoyed it more so when making this video. But to me, Sonic 2 always felt like the odd one out of all of the 4 classic Sonic games. I don't like Sonic 1, but it's important to the franchise. I mean, it's the reason it even exists. Sonic 3, we'll get there when we get there. And I've just always had a soft spot for Sonic CD. It's so different from the other 3, and it gave me my favorite Sonic character. So maybe I'm just a little biased because of that. But Sonic 2, it's just a good, solid Sonic game. Just a good, solid game. And that's how I've always just seen it. 7 out of 10. I mind you, a high 7 out of 10. This game doesn't do anything that I'd call bad, but for me, it doesn't really reach any of the highs to truly call it great. But hey, a lot of people love this game. And even then, I highly recommend that you play it, even though you don't really have a way to play the original. And again, fuck you, Sega. So, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.